My philosophy, if I were to write a book about sales, is that there are two ways to be really powerful and make a lot of money
Mhm.
in sales. The one is to study, is what I would call a healthy way, a moral way, and the other I'd call an immoral one, right? Now, whether you're religious or not, I think you can still use those terms, right? And the immoral way is you study human psychology so that you know how to get people very, very, very emotional. And once they're emotional, you then lead them to what you want them to do. It works. It's incredibly powerful. It's effective. And if you study a lot of the big salespeople, a lot of the big stages, you see that there's a lot of that. And
Mhm.
it works. You can get very wealthy on it. And so I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but I don't think it's good for people. I don't think it's good for
Yeah.
individuals. And I don't think it's, quite frankly, good for a country to have businesses that are now I think they're taking advantage of people. It's legal, but I don't like it.
Welcome back to Return on Design. I am your host, Rachel Niederhofer, and today I have a special guest, Ammon Brimhall. He is a real estate investor, a real estate educator, and an entrepreneur. So I'm so glad to have you, Ammon. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Rachel. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk with you.
So tell our listeners, Ammon, a little bit about yourself. Like, how did you end up in the world of real estate and as an investor?
Yeah, it's a fun story. I've spent my whole life really as an investor and as an investment educator, but years and years and years ago now, it doesn't seem like that long ago, but it has been in my early 20s. I went to an event, a large event, like many people may have gone to, in a big stadium with a lot of speakers. I was framing, on a construction site, so I was building houses, and I went to this big event, and they presented stock trading, and they presented. I don't think Amazon was around at the time, so there wasn't like a build an Amazon store guy, but there was stock trading, there's real estate investing, there was, I'm sure, some other elements there. And I thought the real estate investing looked really, really, really interesting. And so I signed up for that. And I certainly didn't have the money to sign up for that, but I did. Well, at the big event, they always get you to go to a 3-day that's fairly, inexpensive. And then there they have the bigger package
Mhm.
anyway. So I came through that progression, which is very common in the investment space, and signed up with a company. And they did not give a very good education, but worked hard, worked my guts out for a year, just saw how the idea worked. And after a year's worth of time, I finally got a deal. And I mean, there's some fun stories in between there of the struggle, whatever, but I'll keep it short here. But after that first year, I got my first deal. We made 60,000 on that. I split it with my partner. They got 30. I got 30 grand. That was just enough to pay my debts and keep me from drowning. And from there, I've been flipping, wholesaling, renting, educating, the whole gamut there. But it's now been over 25 years I've been investing.
That's amazing. So you said something interesting I didn't know about you. You were already in the construction space. Tell me a little bit about that. Were you, you said framing. What exactly were you doing?
Yeah, so I did. I grew up, my generation is probably the last one where we almost always had our dads. Our dads had us out there with hammers or in the garden or painting something. So it's kind of funny that people just younger than me sometimes, will talk about painting a house. Like, I don't know how to do that. Well, you can figure it out. And they're a little more intimidated. But, my dad's generation, everybody was in construction. So it was just a part of life, And so
Mm.
I think maybe I'm wrong on that, but I think, my whole life wasn't construction. We just grew up around people and you did it. Funny story online. Once somebody asked me if they could change their own hot water heater. And I was like, yes, you can. I literally got attacked by people. They're like, you're going to kill them. It's got gas and hot water. It's going to blow up. They're going to die. You're killing people. I was like, are you serious? We've gotten to a point where people can't change their own hot water heater. Oh my goodness. Anyway,
Yeah.
but I was never big into the trades. My dad wasn't in construction, but just as a young father trying to figure out how I was going to make a living, I dropped out of college and hadn't completed there. I went back later and finished, but I dropped out and just there was an ad for framing. And so for about 2 years, I framed houses. So I can't say that I'm a tradesman. In fact, I'm hardworking, but you probably don't want me painting your house or doing your
Yeah.
drywall. I had a little bit of experience with it, and then I had entered, like I say, into framing for a couple of years. So a little bit around it.
Interesting. Did that experience help draw you into, wanting to know more about real estate, or you're not sure?
No. Actually, what drew me into real estate was just generally, I really enjoy the idea of finance, and I enjoy the idea of how
Mm,
money works and how it operates. And so I'm far more like if I had gone where my talents were, I'd probably be a professor. That's probably where I would have gone if I just went where my natural inclinations are. But I love the finance idea, love what you can do by making wise decisions. And then I have read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, which I think your listeners, if they're out there, probably over half of them are nodding saying, I've read that book. And it talks about how owning a business and or investing is how you actually generate wealth. And that made sense to me. The book's written really practically. It's really dumbed down to a basic understanding of wealth creation. It's not really good at how, but it's meaning the individual bricks, but in the bigger picture, it's good at giving you the map. And so I read that book. And so when I saw the chance to learn about it, I thought, oh, this is a chance to learn how to build business and do those things. And why
yeah.
I was attracted to real estate, I don't know. It's a good question. Why did I go the real estate way instead of the stock way? I mean, I did actually sell a stock product after I was framing. I was getting into real estate, and for a year I worked on as a salesman in a stock education product. But I still just was drawn to real estate, not the stock investing. And I do own stock. I do a little bit of options, but basic puts, basic calls. But real estate's really my gig. But Rich Dad Poor Dad was probably the thing that got me thinking about it.
Interesting. Yeah. And then you have found yourself as an educator, and I have learned significantly, a lot of great stuff around real estate from you. So I love that you're willing to you just be in the space. It's difficult. You mentioned that you kind of learned the hard way, and it was kind of trial by fire the first couple years. And unfortunately, that's what so many people do when they enter into the world of real estate. So there's so much power in having people like you who, are willing, number one, to share their information, but just tell us a little bit about kind of how you ended up transferring your knowledge into this education space and your journey there.
Well, thank you. You're very kind. I do hope people have learned a lot by listening to me. I love to talk. I love to teach. So I have my kids are getting older now, and they always come to me like, Dad, how do I know what I want to do for a living? And I always tell them, look, you don't. All you can do is go out and get experience, and you'll find your talents, you'll find your strengths, you'll find things you don't like. They know that I invest, and they understand what it is, but they're not drawn to buying old beat up houses and fixing them up, right?
Mhm.
And so that's okay, right? So I tell them you'll just find your strengths. Well, I forget what it was. Oh, I know what it was actually. I was leaving a sales position that I did not, unfortunately in sales in our country, sometimes we feel like being a salesman is a license to lie. I'm the marketing department. I can kind of tell a half truth. And I did not feel adequate about that sales position. So I was literally walking out the door and literally walking out the door. Somebody walked out the door with me, and I was leaving the company permanently. Somebody else was just leaving. And I said, what are you up to? I'm going to go get an interview for coaching in a different position. So they were coaching for this other company. I said, can I go with you? He said, sure. And so I just went to an interview. Literally, I sat down completely, just sat down and said, can I interview? And I forget, and this is so long ago, but got the interview. I sat down, and I remember the interviewer said, well, teach me about a contract. So, okay. So just off the top of my head, I taught him about a purchase and sale contract. He says, all right, you're hired. You can be a coach. And
Wow.
that was it. That's how I got into coaching. And I loved it. I enjoyed it. I had a great time when people have aha moments and the clarity comes, and suddenly they're like, I know why I'm not succeeding now, or I know why I'm not overcoming this barrier. I have a clear plan of action. It's still to this day incredibly rewarding for me to feel that the dots are connecting, and I can feel that. I can sense that as I'm teaching. And so it was really fun. And so without really asking for promotions or anything, I rose to the top coach in that company. And then from there, when that company went a different way, they actually stopped teaching. I reached out to other companies and then slowly got into doing a webinar. Like that popped up. And when it was
Mhm.
created, I volunteered for that. I did very well at that. And then I trained webinar teams. And then from there, I've spoken in Las Vegas in some of the largest investment symposiums in ever. I don't know if I can say the world, but certainly in the U.S. with thousands of people there.
Yeah.
Robert Kiyosaki spoke at those events, and I've trained teams, worked for Fortune 500 companies, and I just naturally have been good at teaching, and I love it. And so that's progressed into my realizing that the industry is more, in terms of teaching new investors, the industry is more focused on sales and less focused on student success. which in the last couple of years, I've decided I need to try to do something that's more focused on student success, less focused on sales. And that may bankrupt me because you have to make sales have a business. But I just have this belief that education should pay for itself. It shouldn't
Yeah.
bankrupt 80% of the people who pay for it
Right.
because they thought it would make them wealthy. And so I'm trying to reverse that trend and say, how can we make a profitable company where people can have a shot at becoming an investor, a real estate investor, or a shot at learning about finances, where obviously the company can be profitable, but the people taking the education aren't putting their lives at risk, their
Mm.
marriages at risk, their finances at risk by spending huge sums of money for something that, I'll be very, very, very frank, it's very hard to succeed at flipping a house. It is not an easy task. Even if you have an incredibly awesome educator, it is a very, emotional, mental heavy task. There's a lot of decisions to be made. There's a lot of
Right.
risk, and people aren't really told that in the beginning. And so that's where I'm at now, trying to create a product that's honest, transparent, affordable, and doesn't bankrupt me. But that's kind of the journey there.
Yeah, which I love. And that's what makes you an incredible guest for our podcast, because the whole notion of this Return on Design podcast is actually sharing information to equip people, right? To succeed, to learn, to be able to glean from people who are not just talking about stuff, but actually doing stuff and growing in our own skill set and our own trade. So one thing I've learned a lot from you, Ammon, is how you position yourself as a solution-oriented problem solver, not just, to your point, a sales guy. And I'd love for you to share with the audience a little bit about kind of your mindset around how you have been successful as an investor, how you're always looking to identify motivation, and how you can be a solution to actually help people in the space.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned, I did spend time after framing as I was getting my real estate up as a salesperson. So I read quite a few sales books, and I have
Mm-hmm.
since that time read quite a few sales books. And my philosophy, if I were to write a book about sales, is that there are two ways to be really powerful and make a lot of money in sales. The one is to study is what I would call a healthy way, a moral way, and the other I'd call an immoral one, right? Now, whether you're religious or not, I think you can still use those terms, right? And the immoral way is you study human psychology so that you know how to get people very, very, very emotional. And once they're emotional, you then lead them to what you want them to do. It works. It's incredibly powerful. It's effective. And if you study a lot of the big salespeople, a lot of the big stages, you see that there's a lot of that. And
Mm-hmm.
it works. You can get very wealthy on it. And so I'm not going to say it doesn't work, but I don't think it's good for people. I don't think it's
Yeah.
good for individuals. And I don't think it's, quite frankly, good for a country to have businesses that are now I think they're taking advantage of people. It's legal,
Mm.
but I don't like it. And so the other way is you're still influencing people for sure,
Right.
but you're doing it because you're building trust. You're doing it
Mm-hmm.
because you understand them, and you're doing it because you present them with legitimate solutions to legitimate problems. You're actually trying to engage their mind, not their emotions. And when you engage their minds effectively, the emotion that you create is an honest trust, right? Not a
Mm-hmm.
fabricated, manipulated trust, but an honest trust, which is this person has listened to me. This person has proven they understand where I'm at. This person has proven that they have solutions that can really solve the problems I presented. And this person wants something that is expensive to me, but you know what? They've given me enough value that I'll give them what they're asking for. And so to me, that's called an honest trade. And so that's really what I've designed it around. And the name of my company is Broccoli Real Estate. And the reason I named it that is because broccoli to me really represents honest calories. Right now, it's physical, right? I mean, you eat broccoli, there's no sugar there, there's no hype, there's nothing. You eat broccoli and your body loves every bit of it. It's like a superfood. And so it's not really sexy, but by golly, when you eat broccoli, you're healthy. There's no question. There's no doubt. You trust the food. And it really illustrates what I mean by what education should be. You should trust your educator, and you should trust your investor that's buying your house, that they've
Yeah.
told you everything they should tell you. They haven't withheld things, and that they've been honest. And so that's really how I've been successful. And I think anybody in any industry has that choice. Am I going to learn how to
Mm-hmm.
manipulate humanity through modern sales tactics, or am I just going to really try to be transparent and build trust through effective listening and question asking and solution presentation? And in that regard, I go to, in the real estate industry, everybody says, where are the secret leads? Where do I get these great leads? And my answer is there aren't any secret leads. It's the same leads that have
Yeah.
always been there. It's just that when you engage with that person, they have to, your tone of voice, the way you operate, the way you engage, has to win that trust over so they'll listen to you and give you a chance to make your offer. And that coupled with creativity, I'm very, very creative at solving problems, keeps me in deals and keeps me successful as an
Yeah.
investor.
Which is, I think, a powerful position to have. And I think so many real estate investors don't, and they just are not, they don't have the mindset and the thinking around this solution oriented approach. To your point, it's more, all about volume and sales, and they're kind of missing it. But I do want to understand, I know that you actually are a licensed real estate professional. Am I correct?
I'm not. No,
Oh,
I
you're
don't.
not.
Yeah, no.
Okay. I guess I thought you were. Well, I
No, a
would
lot of
love
people
to.
can because I list my own properties. I just use like a discount listing. I really
Yes.
engage agents. Like, I mean, everybody assumes that I am, but I've never gotten it. Yeah, no, I'm not. So.
Yeah. So tell me about engaging with agents. I know that myself as a real estate investor, this is a continual journey of trying to find agents that are, number one, willing to work with investors and willing to grow in their knowledge base. I've found that a lot of real estate agents kind of shy away from creative solutions or even trying to understand motivation in sellers. And I'm curious, like, how have you leveraged your, positioning to have contact with more seller agents, as an example, or buyer agents, whichever, and really find out how people are motivated? Or are you only dealing with the seller themselves directly? Like, kind of, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I do engage with agents quite a bit and wholesalers. It kind of comes when I'm teaching people, this is part of what sets me apart in the education space. Most of the time you're told, hey, just follow my system. You have lots of leads.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, guys, that's not true. You have to develop communication skills.
Mm-hmm.
You or someone on your team has to develop them. And it's just like if you want to become, this really ripped bodybuilder, you're not going to do it in a month, right? You've got to eat well. You've got to exercise for a couple of years. It takes a while for that to develop. And that's why I
Mm-hmm.
tell people, if you enter real estate investing, it's going to take time. You have to learn to
Yeah.
communicate. So I've just dealt with agents for so long that when I start talking to them in my mind, I can within seconds classify what they're going to be like. These are going to be, investor resistant. These are going to be investor hostile. These are going to be
Yeah.
investor friendly. And I can just very quickly determine what category they're in. And then I can just switch into that mode. If I have an investor hostile, that's fine. I don't have to tell them I'm an investor, right? Or I can
Yeah.
engage them in a way that won't. So once I know where they're at, I look at the situation and I'm able to effectively decide how to deal with them. So I'll just give you a quick example. Let's say that I see a bank-owned property and
Mm-hmm.
I know that it's beat up and I know it fits the criteria of potentially having a seller that wants to get rid of it at a price I can buy it for. Potentially, I don't know. But I call up and I often will call the selling agent directly. My agent didn't bring it to me as a buyer's agent. I'll call the seller's agent directly. And so I'll just ask and say, hey, I'm very excited for this house. I see that you have it listed. Can you tell me a little bit more about it? And as they start talking, I'll say, have you had a lot of action on it yet? Do you have a lot of investors calling you? And a lot of times in a really relaxed way, they'll start talking. I can listen to the tone of voice and things.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if I'm planning on wholesaling it, which I probably only wholesale about 25% of what I pick up. But if I'm planning on doing that and I can tell that they're investor hostile, I'm not going to ask them about wholesaling. I'm not even going to bring it up. I
Right.
know it's going to be impossible for me to overcome. I shouldn't say impossible, but one out of a million. So I'm not going to try. And so I just don't bring it up, and I just assume right there I'm going to double close the thing. And I'll say, okay, great. Well, I'm excited. We can get this done. Let's talk with the bank. Of course, it needs to be at the price that I don't lose money, and I don't bring up wholesaling. The other thing I do is I'm really good at educating. So that
Mm-hmm.
agent can be hostile for investors, but I'll say, hey, if this works for me, I'll do it. Can I send you a spreadsheet that shows you what I would make or lose at the price you have it listed?
Ooh, I love that approach.
Yeah, when people know what you're doing, it's hard for them to
Right.
get offended. When they understand, like I was saying before, it's about trust and education and problem solving. So I show that agent, hey, if I spent, because here's what the agent does. Tell me if I'm
Mm-hmm.
giving too much info here, but
No, you're good. I love it.
you buy the house at 450, you're going to put in 50 grand, so you're into it 500, and it sells
Mm-hmm.
for 550. The agent assumes you just made $50,000.
Exactly.
Okay, we know that you maybe probably didn't even break even by the time you pay the real
Mm-hmm.
estate closing fees. Well, these real estate agents, they're not stupid. They just don't invest, so they don't run these numbers the way we do. So they make
Right.
assumptions that make us look like we're being jerks. So if I have a hostile agent, I never bring up wholesaling. But then I just say, hey, I compliment them. I love that you're trying to get the best you can for your client. That's what you should do. That's your job. See, that's me seeing what's their goal. I'm trying to meet their need. And I appreciate what you're doing. Can I send you a spreadsheet that would show you if I were to do this project, what I would make or lose? And they're all like, hey, sure. So I send it over and they can see, oh, that's what it would cost to relist it. Oh, that's what it would cost to finance. Oh, that's what it would cost to do these things. And it shows right there in red and white, Ammon will lose $15,000. So in their
Wow.
mind, they're like, wow, Ammon bought it for a $100,000 discount. But by the time he put 15 and paid the other fees, he's losing 15 to 20. So then I can call him back and say, hey, again, I'm not trying to be a jerk. I want you to do the best for your client because that's your objective for your client and your commission. And you should do that. But is there anything, and this is the question I ask him, is there anything I can do for you or your client that would justify you bringing that down? And to be honest, if we just brought it down 15, I break even. But this is really risky. And if I don't make more than the agents do, I shouldn't do this. So we're talking like a $75,000 drop. Now, I know that looks like I'm trying to be a jerk here. I swear I'm not. But is there anything I can do for you or your client that would justify that kind of a drop? Well, that whole scenario, they just feel like I'm asking an innocent question that has a solution to my problem, but then I'm listening to them. And I rarely, it's been years since an agent yelled at me or said I'm a thief or been rude. They'll just say, no, I don't think that works for my client. I'm like, hey, I totally get it. I appreciate it. Thanks for doing a great job for your client. I'll check back with you in a few weeks. And I do, right? And that's an example of how I'll deal with like a hostile agent.
Interesting. Yeah, I have definitely experienced where agents, and this is both commercial and residential, they just, and it, I wonder if this is market dependent, like what's the demand in your area, but they just immediately shut down to creative options. Even if it's a win-win across the board, it's like they don't want to deal with it. And yeah, I mean, why, what is it about that? Is there a stigma around real estate investors? Like, what's your experience around how, to your point, some are hostile, some are not?
Yeah. And you just tell me to shut up because I can go for a while on this. I mean, I've been in this
You're
industry.
good. You have a lot of good information to share. So
yeah, there's a few things about it. I think the first thing you have to recognize, well, this isn't the first. This is just a thing. And then we'll go to the first thing. But yeah, there is a stigma around investors. Let's be honest.
right.
A lot of them are trained by salespeople, which means we're trained to use the same manipulative tactics they do. And so agents get sick of us. Let's just be honest with it. We call up, we're using all these kind of high pressure tactics. We're using all these clever, what we think are tricky sales tactics, which people have learned decades ago. It's not like they're new anymore. And people are sick of the manipulation. And a lot of investors go into homeowners and they're not transparent. So yeah, there's a stigma around the word investor. So I actually rarely use that word. I tell agents I buy and sell houses. I don't use the word investor. But yeah, so there's that issue. And we need more honest investing where solutions are being provided that will help. But to the agent side, the first thing is we have to recognize agents come in and out of this industry like crazy. Agents are not a stable group of people. It's a sales job. And sales is hard, and most people. So I think in good years, a third of your inventory of agents will turn out. I think that's the stat. This last year, I think 60% have gotten out. So you have to realize you're dealing with people mostly who are fairly new, who are agents for the last 1 years. Well, think of how dynamic creative financing is. It's very unique. And so the second point, so the first is you have a lot of new agents. The second point is, and this is true of all of us as humans, if something is confusing, we immediately distrust it.
Right.
Okay. Now that's not because we're dumb. It's because we're smart. If I don't understand something and if I don't know what's in a box, I put my hand in there. All it takes is 1 second to chop my hand off. Right. It took me years to throw it. Right. My mother's womb. Right. Or that's the way it is in all of life. It takes months to build a house. You can destroy it in an hour. It takes years to build a good relationship and a good marriage. You can destroy it in 30 minutes. And so that's the way life works. So when you don't understand something, your body and mind isn't stupid to be afraid of it. It's smart because you can destroy things in a heartbeat. And so when you go to a new agent and you start talking about something like subject to, or you start talking about something like seller carry, they haven't studied deeds of trust. They haven't studied deeds. They haven't studied promissory notes. They haven't studied equitable interest. They haven't studied civil versus criminal law. And let's face it, when we do a subject to, we're not breaking criminal law, but we're definitely breaching contracts. And so if
Right.
you're a new agent or you just haven't studied these things, you're like, this is confusing. So immediately you're going to
They shut
distrust.
down.
Distrust is going
Yeah.
to make you kind of wonder if this, hey, does this investor belong to, the KGB? Or are they a Russian spy? Are they the mafia? What, right? So if you understand that and you come at the agents with more questions and explanations than you do just presenting, in other words, you have to prepare the agent. You have to first understand where their mind is. Then you have to teach
Hmm.
them about things. And once you've taught them, if they seem receptive, and only if it actually helps their client, then you present it properly. You can get agents to consider it. But if you don't
Yes.
do all that properly, the odds are that they're just literally going to see you as very shady and immediately. And because they're new and because they just don't
So
understand.
walk me through how presenting it properly. I know you said you will often present actual numbers and let them know, look, I'm not being a jerk, but here's the reality of how the numbers work. But go a little deeper into how is that presentation supposed to look to gain that trust and kind of facilitate that conversation?
Great. I'll recommend to everybody to get the book Spin Selling. Okay, so it's an older
Spin
book.
selling.
I don't think people really recommend it, but it's just my favorite. It's actually along the tunes of Everybody Loves the Book, Never Split the Difference. That's about the FBI negotiator. Spin Selling is actually giving a lot of the same techniques, but it's more from an academic standpoint. It breaks it down. It's a great book. So I use a lot of that technique. So if I get with an agent, the first thing I try to do is just try to understand what's going on with their client.
Hmm.
And if there is no need for creative financing, I'm not going to present creative financing. And that's what most people ask me first. How can I get an agent to accept it? I'm like, well, first of all, don't present it if it doesn't help the client, right? It's
Right.
not
Back to your
about
problem solving mindset.
correct. Yeah,
Hmm.
I don't get somebody to do something because it only benefits me. A good business person
Yes.
meets their need and gets what I need in return. Well, if seller financing is bad for them, then I'm already acting in bad faith to present it. Now I've got to come up with a fake story. I've got to now get their emotions high and get them excited about something irrelevant to push them into the way I want things done. And I've decided not to do business that way. So
Hmm.
I have to first start out with, hey, Mr. or Miss Agent, can you talk to me about the situation? Can you tell me what's going on? And this is with the seller or the agent, either one. And generally speaking, I can get them to talk, which requires that they sense that I want to know the information for good reasons, not for nefarious. And that's another mistake people make is they call the agent like, okay, you're the agent, I'm the investor, let's negotiate. I'm going to win.
Right.
And immediately that investor's going to be like, oh, so we're playing poker. And they're going to take all their cards and put them to their chest like this. They're not showing you a thing.
Yeah.
But language I used before, which is, hey, I understand you're trying to do the best for your client. I appreciate that. Thank you. Can I explain where I'm coming from? Sure. Well, already they're like, okay, this guy seems to be like he's trying to create a win-win. And then I'll say, what can I do for you or your client? And they're like, oh, this isn't a game of poker. This is a game of let's us against the enemy. How can we solve the
Hmm.
problem? Well, suddenly they're doing this with their cards, right? This is what the seller's doing. This is what the seller's up to. And then I listen to that. And if the seller doesn't need or it would be bad to do seller financing, I'm not going to bring it up. I'm going to find a different solution. And if you're an investor that doesn't have an array of solutions, well, then you're going to have a problem. Don't put a cast on a blade that's not broken, right? Just don't do
Yeah.
it. And so I wish more salespeople would say that. If they're not a qualified lead, don't sell them the product.
Which is great. That is what you're doing along with, there are people like this that exist in the real estate space. Like we are solution oriented, we're ethical, and we're not trying to deceive anybody, but there are options that so many people just don't know enough about where everybody can win. And this is how, people like you and your company should be rising up. And this is what I hope people feel encouraged today of like, it doesn't have to be the same way everyone else is teaching how to do real estate. I mean, most of these people, it's questionable if they're even really real estate investors because they don't have, like you said, a Rolodex of solutions, growing in their knowledge, understanding like there are multiple options, more than one way to skin a cat, as they say. And I love that about you. And so glad that you can like impart all of that information to our listeners. I do want to know also kind of what's the forecast that you see in the horizon of real estate investing, education. I know you kind of shared a little bit about your goals, but like just tell me a little more about, what's on the horizon.
Wow. So I think you're kind of asking more like from a market perspective, like what do you think the market's going to do? Or is it more like me personally? Which would you prefer?
I would say a little bit of both, because definitely there's a big market shift in our midst, right? But like, how do you see yourself being positioned in this shift to grow yourself, grow your business, and kind of reach those goals that you want to, take up a little more education space?
Yeah, I'll try to word it in a way that is useful to listeners. First of all, as far as what's going to go on with the economy, the first thing you should recognize, if anybody tells you they know what's going to happen, just immediately call them a liar. I mean, don't do it to their face, right? But in your brain, say, okay, they're a liar. We don't know. We live in such a
Mm.
dynamic, moving, fluid economy that nobody can predict. There was a great debate by, I haven't got to listen to it yet. There's Ken McElroy, who is optimistic about the market, and Melody Wright, who is predicting that this is going to be a worse crash than 2008. Like they are polar opposites. And there's a debate. If you look up Ken McElroy and Melody Wright, you'll see it. It's like a 48-minute one. I haven't been able to watch it yet, but I have listened to both of them separately. And the reality is this: the economy works on supply and demand plus inflation.
Mhm.
You have to add the plus inflation in there, okay? And so even though today is not 2008, period. Everybody says it's 2008. Yes, our the affordability is very low, right? You can't afford things. That's true. That matches 2008. But the mechanisms behind where we're at are so different that you can't really compare. You can look at some kind of technical data and say, oh, it's the same. No, 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 no. Totally different reasons, right? If I took a cannon and blew somebody into space out of a cannon versus somebody who's up there in a rocket ship, they're both in space, but they got there different ways. The guy that came out of the cannon is likely dead. The guy who went up the rocket space, I mean, he's got tools, he's got a ship, different scenarios, same location. So bad example, just made it up, but you guys get the point. Right? So reality is nobody knows. For me, the reality is I don't think we can go back super far because inflation has taken us so far down the road that just to hire a contractor now is 100, 150 bucks an hour. Material now, gosh, paying for material is crazy. So how can
Mhm.
prices drop below the cost to build? Just like I say, it's supply and demand plus inflation. And there's a great book everybody should read called The History of Money. I can't remember the author, but it's phenomenal. So on that note, I think there are reasons to think that a lot of markets will be stable or even grow in pricing. Other markets will go down in prices. I think 25% of the markets are going down, 75 are going up. But do I think it's a 2008 crash? I don't think so. But I could be wrong,
I like
right?
that you bring up the 2008 crash. I would love to know, like, where were you in your real estate journey during that time? And, if you could speak to the younger version of yourself listening, right? Here we are on this precedent cusp, supposedly, of market conditions. Like, what would you tell your younger self? Like, how can you position yourself to, be a successful real estate investor today based off
Yeah.
of what you experienced?
'08 was actually pretty clear. I was a young man. What was I in '08? I was maybe 25, something like that, somewhere in there. No, I was 30. So, oh, heaven's sakes. I can't talk and do math at the same time. I was some age much younger than I was now.
Yeah.
But that was easy because when I was there, I saw what was going on. Everybody was speculating. Everybody was in pre-construction. They would get these loans and the builder would promise to build their house in the next 1 to 2 years. So you would get a loan and you would wait 1 to 2 years for your house to be built. And they had these adjustable rate arms. Everybody was getting them. I mean, literally, like my brother
Yeah.
had one. And I said, guys, like you can't afford the payments, like everybody's speculating. So when the crash came there were huge amounts of vacant inventory. So you could walk away from your house because there were 8 homes you could rent. Why? Because everybody was building a house for speculation. And so
Mhm.
for me, it was pretty easy to see that there could be a crash. And after that crash, I just didn't have the confidence personally, but I should have bought up a ton of homes. And I almost did, but I was nervous and I would, that would have been just like the bankroll. But that was pretty easy to see, quite frankly, and pretty straightforward that it was a lot of gambling by a lot of people. And
Mhm.
now today is different, though. Today is very different. It's much more confusing. People aren't gambling on homes. They didn't go and buy homes just to speculate. So, like, I have a brother who bought a home and he already had a house. He's like, man, prices are going up so fast. I'm just going to buy this house with this contractor and wait. So, what I would tell myself today is I would say to take action, but keep listening. Take
Mhm.
action, but keep listening. And then I would just teach myself the same rules I've taught. And by the way, I love the game Monopoly. I do not think there is a better game for teaching business on the planet than Monopoly. And if you have somebody who knows how to play it and can actually teach you what it's teaching you, it teaches you all types of things about liquidity. How much cash do you keep on hand? When do you invest? When do you keep your cash? Talks about negotiations. It talks about inflation, right? Because you're always putting new money into the market. Every time you pass go, you're giving more cash. Talks about development. Lots of great things in there. But I would say don't freeze. Keep taking action. But you better be listening more than you're acting today. And you should listen to people who are doomsayers. You should be listening to people who are optimistic. And then you should be trying to avoid political stuff out there. I mean, literally, the political speakers are just going to say, they're going to manipulate whatever to say what they want. Try to find people trying to be honest, but take action. Be careful. Don't buy a lot of rentals right now, right? Don't buy a lot of rentals right now unless you have boatloads of cash. There's other places to invest right now. Flipping right now, wholesaling right now is great, but unless you have like the right location, or if you're going to commercial, I think commercial is truly having a bigger crash. I think in commercial we're having like a real crash. So if you are at that level, then look into commercial, but don't jump to commercial until you're ready for it. That's another problem of our industry. We kind of tell people, think big, go for it. So I have new investors, never done anything like, Ammon, I'm going to buy a 50 unit apartment building. I'm like, I love you. And I never say this part, but you're stupid to do it. Right. So don't do something bigger than you can do. Keep learning, keep growing. Opportunities will always come. So listen, take appropriate action. Don't take more risk than you can handle. But if you keep doing that pattern, you'll get there. And remember, success is a decades-long progress, right? Life is about discipline. You don't build a family because you have a great evening with your kids once. You have to have great evenings with your kids for decades, right? You don't have a great marriage because you took your wife on one great date 1 year. You got to take her on a date, all the time, right? And you got to listen to her. You got to do those things. You don't build an investment career and become a millionaire because you had a great deal. You got to do great deals in and out. And so recognize you're dedicating yourself to a lifestyle, not a moment of flash pan success. And it's hard, and you've got to be dedicated. If you'll do that, you'll get through this particular era. But be careful. Every market's different. So it's much trickier this time than it was.
So I have one final question, and I already somewhat know the answer, or at least a portion of the answer. But, so many people today, so many gurus on social media, so many voices of influence that people could be listening to that maybe know real estate or have a level of history in real estate. Like, how do you decipher? How do you, as a new investor, really kind of cut through who should I be listening to? Who should I not be listening to? And what would your recommendation be for just alignment for people, like a place to get started?
Yeah, thank you for that question. So obviously I can point to myself, right? I mean, I love what I'm doing. You can always come to broccoliRE.com and do that. My products are pretty straightforward in that, every Tuesday I do a deal review for free. And then I have what are called phases and things like that. But you guys can go to my website and check that out. You can DM me if you want to, and I'll tell you more about that. Again, I mean, we'll see if I can make it profitable. As far as like in general, though, like if I were to give somebody just general advice that isn't totally self-serving, it's hard. There are a trillion investor educators out there, and they all get into it because they all know they can sell a $10,000 package or $20,000 package, and they don't have to guarantee your success. And imagine if you sell a $10,000 package, you just need 20 clients this year, and you're doing great, right? So that's the problem. There's a huge incentive, and you can make great money. I mean, I just did a wholesale where I made $7,500 last week. I have a flip that I'm doing that will go on the market. I'll make $80,000 on that. I had $125,000 profit. So all you have to do is show people these. They're, I want to know your system.
Right.
So in general, it's hard to find an educator that is trying to educate. So, but you can get on forums. You can get just generic books and read them. You can get all kinds of free podcasts. And I would say dedicate yourself at least to 6 months of just getting on forums and listening and watching. There's so much free stuff out there. You don't need to spend money. And in the end, I will tell you this. If there's a program that wants you to spend $10, $20, $30, $40,000 to get the education, the odds of you succeeding with that program are maybe 2 or 3 out of 100. So know that you're taking a large risk on that. And so find a way to educate taking smaller chunks of risk, right? Where you're only investing a little bit of money in a particular amount of education, and then you're investing in the next side. And try to find somebody that's honest with you about reality. And like I said, I struggle to tell you who's out there because everybody's selling the hype. Oh, you can get rich, just follow this program. And very few people are saying it's a lot of work, a lot of sales training. So be careful about spending huge sums of money and get lots of little bits of education, and then make sure you get to know 4 or 5 or 6 gurus, watch their free information, and try to find the one that's being the more honest. All right, if they're telling
Yeah.
you the hard parts, they're likely going to have an education that's driven on your success. And so that's the best way in general. But like I say, I'm already doing all that, so you can come to me. But
Yeah.
again, I'm still
I was
serving.
gonna, I agree with that. Like vulnerability, people who are willing to not just flash the shiny thing in front of you and get your attention, but like really go deep and share their real experiences and, kind of be an open book. And there's not really selfish ambition around it. And yeah, more voices sometimes at first, I think can help narrow down like, who am I really drawn to? And that is exactly what Return on Design is about. It is about sharing with our listeners, people like you, people that we know, we've vetted, we've learned from, and we can truly put them in front of our audience and say, these are the right people you need to be listening to. They have a tremendous amount of experience, but they have ethics and, they're not just in it for selfish reasons. So I'm so glad you came on today. I hope that people have really enjoyed everything you have to say. I know you already told us your website, but go ahead and tell our listeners one more time. How can we connect with you and get in touch with Eamon?
Yeah, thank you, thank you. It's broccoli, BROCCOLIRE.com. So broccoli.re.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Eamon, and thank all of you for listening. Until next time, we'll see you
Thank
soon.
you, Rachel. Thanks so much.
Yes.